Hey YouTube, what is up? This is Eben Magician 34 with Forgotten Fridays. And while fairies are definitely a thing, it's mostly Mega Gardevoir now. And it's got the usual, regular Xerneas and Aromatisse support, but Mega Gardevoir is pretty much the headliner in all the fairy decks you're going to encounter, which I think is a shame because while Mega Gardevoir is awesome, it's certainly not the only great fairy. And I think a fairy deck can operate without Mega Gardevoir at all. And so, today's Forgotten Friday, we're going to take a look at the other fairies. And this deck is affectionately called Florges' Bright Garden, because it focuses on Florges EX. Well, and her partner in crime, Xerneas EX. And the whole idea of the deck is basically to set yourself up for 2-hit KOs all day long. And of course, taking advantage of her lead is nice, but she's got very inexpensive attacks, and we're going to make her 160 HP quite well fleshed out. So we're running 3 Florges EX, kind of keep that in mind as we go along. We're also running 3 Xerneas EX. Xerneas EX and Florges EX are actually both very inexpensive, so in a lot of ways this deck is actually pretty low cost, which is nice because it also packs quite a punch. X-Blast can pick up a KO here in this deck with basically any other previous hit. Breakthrough sets you up for X-Blast knockouts. Breakthrough can also potentially set you up for Bright Garden knockouts, but moreover what you're trying to do is Bright Garden first, and then Breakthrough for a knockout on that Pokemon, deal 30 to somebody else, and set yourself up for the X-Blast knockout next turn after that. It's plays like that, but we do have a few other tricks up our sleeve that will help us do some extra damage here and there. But that's basically the core of the deck as we're running it right now. So next up, not too surprising, more of our typical fairy support. We're running 3 copies of Xerneas, just the regular Xerneas. This is our ideal lead. Just Geomancy. Get all those fairy energies out, pump up your field. Nothing more complicated than that. It gets your fairy gardens and your Aromatisses very happy. And of course, Xerneas can also snipe things like Safeguarders, which is good for us. We're going to run 3 Aromatisse, partially because we want to kind of stock up our bench in this deck for Bright Garden. And also because we really do want our Fairy Transfer going off to make Xerneas EX happy too. So we are going to run 3 Aromatisse in this build. And of course to support it we're running 3 Spritzy, and either Spritzy is okay, but this one's slightly better. I mean, it's kind of debatable in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter, but this is my preferred Spritzy anyway. Supporter-wise, we're running the typical 4 Professor Juniper. You can run Sycamore too, but once again I like her better. Just because. Now this is my video. We're running 3N. Our opponents are quite possibly going to take 1 or 2 knockouts early because we do a little bit of setup in the first 2 or 3 turns. So if they score a knockout, N is quite good for us. But otherwise, once we start doing KOs, obviously, and not so great. So we're in the comfortable 3 range as far as I'm concerned for this deck. It was a very close call, though. We're running 2 fan clubs. I almost ran 3 fan club and 2N. Because your early game setup is so crucial, and Fan Club is so good for getting like Spritzy Xerneas, and then you can free treat with Fairy Energy and Fairy Garden into that Xerneas to Geomancy and stuff like that. I mean, it's a very good card. The reason I opted for 3N 2 Fan Club instead of the other way around is because this card can be very questionable mid to late games. While it's so good early, late, not necessarily as much. Its best job mid to late game is just going to be to go get a replacement Florges or Xerneas EX. That's about the best it can hope for. We're also opting for 2 copies of Skyla. We get a number of Skyla targets, and this is a good Versus Seeker target mid to late game as well. And because we are running Lysander's Trump card, obviously that's a great supporter to put back into your deck for late game answers. We're running 1 Colress because we like to stock our bench, of course. We're running 1 Lysander, because this obviously helps us secure important knockouts and goes great with Breakthrough, and of course is also very nice with Bright Garden. We're running 1 copy of Az. This is because we can switch our energies off our Pokemon very quickly and easily, like our EXs. Then we can Az to return them to our hand, simply replay them straight back onto the field, and switch the energies back onto them. And we can even free treat with Fairy Garden to get that Pokemon right back into the active slot. So it functions a lot like Max Potion, except of course that you can Versus Seeker for it, which is nice. We are running 1 Lysander's Trump card. this can be a counter to certain matchups, but it's also a nice way to cycle back in things like Max Potion and whatnot to kind of keep our tricks rolling and to make sure we don't run out of fairy energy in case something horrible happens. We don't just die for lack of energy, which is quite painful. And because we are quite reliant upon it in this build, we are opting for 4 copies of Fairy Garden, and this can of course also get rid of things like Fighting Stadium, Verbank City Gym. This helps you trump your opponent's stadiums. But it's just so very important to get those free retreats in this deck and to keep that flowing. So we are definitely opting for 4 there. Speaking of Max Potion, we are running 2. It only has selected opportunities of use, but when we do play it, it's game-changing because it basically denies your opponent a knockout on one of your EXs. And you can even fire this on Florges if you don't have Aromatisse up yet, just because Florges has such a low energy requirement. We're running... Muscle Band actually does not net us any really crucial KOs. X-Blast at 160 is pretty much the same as X-Blast at 140. Bright Garden at 140 instead of 120. I mean, all your KOs are pretty much the same when you do the math. So Hard Charm makes a lot more sense. It's essentially turns Xerneas EX into a reverse Yveltal EX in a lot of ways. And this turns Xerneas EX into a 190 HP Pokemon in a lot of ways, and Florges into a 180. And I've talked about this before. But what this does is it can easily buy you a turn because of the way calculations for damage are in the metagame and whatnot. This can be very powerful, and it works very well on regular Xerneas in the early game too. So we are opting for 3. And of course we can cycle them back with Lysander's trump card. And it goes very well with Max Potion and Az, given that it can give you more opportunities to fire those cards off. Now, that said, we are running Rock Guard as our ace spec. And I've talked about this card before too. It's an unusual choice, but Computer Search, honestly, in a lot of ways, because the way our deck is set up with so much consistency, is not necessarily that great, and discarding 2 cards is going to be kind of painful in a lot of scenarios for us. The main reason we've opted for Rock Guard over other cards like Super Scoop Up, for example, Super Scoop Up Cyclone, that is basically because this, combined with either Bright Garden or X-Blast, is almost a guaranteed KO. So put this on either your EXs, and it puts your opponent in a very difficult position. It makes it to where basically if they attack, they knock themselves out in a way, because you'll either revenge kill or a previous attack will guarantee knockout. And it makes your opponent go into some very difficult situations and can buy you free prizes and whatnot. It's a big control and field advantage kind of card. And it's a very nice thing to bring back with Trump card as well. It's very powerful, the ability to just drop 60 damage on your opponent as a penalty for attacking. So it's very crucial and very practical in this deck. I think of it as one of our big 7 threats. Those threats being 3 Florges EX, 3 Xerneas EX, and the 1 Rock Guard. Now, we're running 2 Ultra Balls. We really don't need more. It's a little more versatile than Evo Soda, as it can get us our Beat Sticks, so we opted for that. But it's still a ticket to Aromatisse, obviously. In many capacities, you're going to go get Aromatisse with this, but when Aromatisse is quite handy, this definitely can still go get you your Beat Sticks. But the discard is a little painful here, so we only run the 2. It's all we really need. We're opting for 2 Versus Seeker. We already run 15 supporters, so a 3rd Versus Seeker would be kind of painful. And we have Trump card to cycle everything back, so we're not too very worried about it. But still, crucial Lysanders and Azes and things like that. We're running 1 letter just because getting our energies is pretty crucial in the early game. So we have we're running 14 energies, and then we have letter, and then we have 2 Skyless. So that gives us a lot of consistency there. And we are also running 1 switch. We are running 4 Fairy Gardens, but this helps us get around status and whatnot. Statuses like Sleep and Paralysis, which are uncommon, but can be very very problematic, of course, when they do hit for any deck. So we do have this as a Skyla target as a kind of a 1-out, just in case, sort of thing. So we do have that. And last but not least, as I mentioned before, we are running 14 Fairy Energies. Just count them. I know you won't. But at any rate, this is 14 Fairy Energies. So, this is our Forgotten Fairies, Florges's Bright Garden. It's a pretty unique and very enjoyable version of fairies that doesn't rely on Mega Gardevoir EX. So just to give you a somewhat different change of pace that can, I don't know, I think it's just kind of refreshing, and I love Florges EX. I think it's hilarious and powerful all at once. So, Try it out for yourself at your local, and until next time, like, comment, subscribe, check out my Twitter, link will be down below in the description, and I will see you next time.